The US Treasury Secretary is to tell Chinese officials Washington wants healthy economic competition, but Janet Yellen will defend US trade curbs imposed on security grounds and express concern about Beijing's export controls on metals used in semiconductors and solar panels. Let's get some analysis on this as we see Janet Yellen being greeted there on the red carpet in Beijing. We're joined live by Una Alexandra Betsiina-Cherakova, who's head of the China Studies Center at the Riga Stadins University. Thank you very much for being with us. Can you give us your perspective on what this visit is about?
Well, of course, Janet Yellen herself tweeted that it was the president of the United States that charged the administration with deepening communication with China. And I think the 20 handshakes that are making rounds on TikTok already as a joke that we just saw on screen there kind of testify to that. But of course, this is a double-edged sword, right? Because sending basically, she used to be a London School of economics professor, is a bit of an issue because economy here is both a demo of real talk, right? So this is not small talk, weather issues anymore, or, something. This is real talk about the economy. But on the other hand, it's a non-winner in agenda terms, because of course, the issues are structural. They run deep. They run back to Trump's administration. But at the same time, of course, this is also a very interesting sign because she's to meet with the PM, Li Qiang, whose portfolio, of course, is the economic one. And I think that both sides kind of understand that rhetoric is just too heated at this point, that they can just talk themselves into trouble, and they need to really clear out these communication channels.
Indeed, Janet Yellen is kind of in a way walking a tightrope, isn't she? Because the imbalance in trade between China and the US is well established. Is there a sense perhaps that this is all about supply and demand and the US is on the wrong side of the equation?
Well, I mean, absolutely, you're right, because just a few days ago, at least some people are making the connection that, China came up with export controls on gallium and germanium. And those are the things you need if you want to produce semiconductors. So, of course, this is a tit for tat on the CHIPS Act. Absolutely. But at the same time, I think she is an interesting figure to lead this effort because actually the Chinese press have been interestingly praising her a little bit within, of course, the large critique, calling the U.S. two-faced and saying that the U.S. cannot really be trusted because at the end of the day, the interests collide. But let me just quote a little bit how Global Times praises Janet Yellen by saying, Yellen, who is widely viewed by Chinese analysts as a pragmatic economic official, has been vocal about cutting U.S. tariffs on Chinese exports and avoiding decoupling. So they are painting her as the one to talk to on the other side of sorts.
Indeed, and as you say, those handshakes bouncing around TikTok are really going to make another impression as well on a different level. So Janet Yellen perhaps creating a kind of double-edged point of attack in a very positive sense, not, of course, seeking to put China down in any way. Is the fact, though, that remains that the US is vulnerable in this negotiation? China does hold a lot of the key cards in this argument.
Certainly, the U.S. holds a lot of cards economically speaking, but China does have a card or two up its sleeve. Of course, the topic that has come up and will come up is the U.S. position, a strict no for China on military supplies for Russia in the context of the Russian invasion in Ukraine. So that is something China can play with, right? What are we going to get out of this? The second question, of course, that goes beyond economy, and that is existential to both sides, is the Taiwan and the South China Sea question. My colleagues reported today that Xi Jinping visited the Eastern Military Command, which is in charge of the Taiwan Strait, right about the time when Janet Yellen landed in Beijing. And that, of course, is a signal.
I was going to say the optic there is certainly saying one thing about the importance of Taiwan in terms of Xi Jinping's thinking. And of course, in the back of his mind will be what Joe Biden said about the US will defend Taiwan if China makes a move.
Yes, well, I mean, we have to remember that, of course, officially the US has not stepped back from strategic ambiguity, and strategic ambiguity still stands in there, right? Even people who are saying that Biden's utterances, in fact, also play into this game. We don't know, right? But at the end of the day, of course, it is about economy, but it's also about Taiwan. It's also about Ukraine. We just cannot, no pun intended, decouple economy from security and global stability at this point in the U.S.-China relationship.
Hear exactly what you're saying, because one other thing to mention too is that in terms of economic terms, defense is big business, is it not?
Yes, I wouldn't be the one to judge. I'm not involved in it, but absolutely, of course, that is one of the aspects here as well on the U.S. side, but also on China's side. And we see that China's defense industry has been growing. And it is no surprise, of course, that this is where we make the round back to economy, because a lot of these companies that the U.S. has been trying to curb, of course, are dealing in double-use technology.
Alexandra Zielenkova, thank you very much indeed for sharing that analysis with us. We appreciate your time joining us from Riga Stardust University. Thank you very much indeed.